All right, everyone. Thanks for coming back once again. The Faces of Business. I just had to put a little bit of AC/DC on there for Jason. We were talking about music before we got in here, and this is the one he suggested, and I think he made a very wise choice today. So thanks for being here today with us, Jason.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to this and an awesome opportunity.
Yeah. Well, like the show name says, we rebranded it this year after we realized that it might be a little more fun. You're obviously in business, and I think it's going to be fun for us to learn more about you, how you're helping people, and then just some of the cool stuff you're doing. Because, man, if there's something that I realized by talking to people like you, is there's so many good people helping others get better in business and really realize their dreams.
Absolutely. I'm with you. It's, as we get older, and we hear this, but you get older, it gets much more important to focus on serving others, right?
Yeah.
When you're right out of the gate, it's all about you and what I want and where I want to get and all this stuff, but that stuff falls flat pretty quickly. So I'm with you. I've been amazed, especially in the last year. There's been amazing things that have taken place in the business community, seeing others, go out there, serve, do what they can to help, considering what everybody went through.
Yeah. It is something about 2020 was like, and a lot of it, so let's back up. There's the COVID, all that stuff sucks, just plain sucks. All of it just sucks. And it's a thing. But when you talk about the business community and you talk about some of the things you see out there, and you talk about how people are really reaching out and helping people, and things like, we've met virtually and through these kind of things where people are really getting to know each other. That's awesome. Yep. It's something we would have never done because we were too freaking busy running around doing our thing and traveling and vacation or whatever it is that we were doing, taking up those time or even the kind of things that it gave time with our families. I know you've got a family, and I really, really think that while there was a lot of ick, there was a lot of good.
Oh, 100%. Now, again, lost jobs, people that lost their lives, family members, things like that. Of course, that goes without saying that we would change that if we could. Yeah. But aside from that, on the business side, I saw a lot of pluses. I wouldn't change last year for anything. And it was my first year in business, keep in mind. And a lot of people out there, struggled and are hurt, but they learned a lot. Yeah. Things were advanced that might have taken another 5 or 10 years had last year not happened.
Yes.
So, a lot of positives.
Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about your background, Jason. So you're in Utah now, and have you always been there? You traveled around. What's that been like for you?
Sure. No, appreciate the question. Born and raised in Utah. Most of my family is been here for a long time. Met my bride, went to the University of Utah, met her up there. And after I graduated, we actually moved out of state and went to San Francisco. And we had kind of an immature mindset that we were never going to come back. Yeah. Again, we're out of Utah. We're never coming back, all that good stuff. But moved to San Francisco, loved it. My aunt and uncle had been there for a handful of years, so traveled there quite a bit. But we loved being in San Francisco, had a great time there. But we wanted to start a family, and we had a goal of, my wife being able to stay home, and that was not possible in San Francisco at that time, right? Yeah. So then we moved to Chicago, changed companies, got to Chicago. That was my first sales job. I was in healthcare. I look back and laugh at some of those early days in sales and some of the things I did, but I fell in love with it. I love sales. That company then moved me to Indianapolis, and they had me run an office there. So I was in Indianapolis for a while, then joined another company that took us to Charlotte. So by the time we got to North Carolina, that was our 4th out-of-state move in 3 years. Yeah. At that point, I realized my wife was committed, right? She was in it for the long haul. But, had a great time in North Carolina, loved it back there. But by that point, we had 2 kids and thought, you know what? We do want to get back. So thankfully, the company I was with moved us back to Utah to open up a territory out here. And we've been back. It'll be 9 years in February that we've been back.
Wow, that's cool. Well, I think one of the perspectives you got, which is interesting, because I grew up in the Midwest, I lived in the Southeast, and now I live out here in Seattle. But the perspective you get from moving cross country like that, and then just like you did, moving from Chicago to Indy to Charlotte, wow, the differences in the kinds of people you meet, and just the vibe and the different things that you get is really incredible.
Well, and to hit on that, honestly, that was two of the biggest lessons we learned moving everywhere. And yeah, different cultures and making
Yeah.
friends and all this. But two of the biggest lessons were, number one, there's quirky stuff everywhere.
Yes.
And number two, you get what you focus on. We have been back home in Utah, like I said, almost 9 years, and we love it.
Yeah.
We are so happy to be back. We love the outdoors, love being around family. It's a great spot. But like I said, when we left, we had more of an immature mindset. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I mean, moving around, if people have that opportunity, they should jump on it, because it's just, you can't experience it any other way.
Yeah. Yeah. I think about that myself too. There are challenges in it, no doubt, but being able to experience those different parts of the country and I can't, those are great places you live too, because I think of them, I go Chicago, man, Chicago's fun downtown, and you got Wrigley and you got some other stuff. And then you go to Indy and you go the Indy 500. I mean,
Yeah.
come on, it is the deal. And then you go to Charlotte and you go North Carolina and you go Myrtle Beach and some of the other stuff in North Carolina, and the barbecue, North Carolina barbecue, I think is one of the better varieties in the United States. And then back to Salt Lake, you go or in Utah, and it's beautiful there.
Yep.
So you really had some great experiences, I'm sure.
No, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, honestly, if we could have recruited our families to come to North Carolina, we probably would have stayed. I loved being in the South. At that time, my territory was always North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, but sometimes including Virginia, Georgia, parts of Florida. So I got to go all around, and it was great. It was an awesome experience. But like you said, being back here, we love it. Utah really is a great space. Talk about business. I mean, our economy here really has done pretty well, even all throughout last year. There's so many tech companies, and our population just continues to grow, which is very helpful. So yeah, we love it being back here, and Utah's a great spot.
Yeah. Yeah. So it is. And that it is interesting about that, because we don't feel it. Yes, the restaurants. I mean, I think you guys didn't shut down in Utah as much as we have in Washington and some other places, of course, but the restaurants have obviously hit. But other than that, if we wouldn't have had up here the aerospace, not delivering planes for a while, obviously hurt the economy up here. But I think outside of that, just by and large, it did pretty well here. Not like Salt Lake, because I'm really amazed at Utah and the amount of tech and software companies. I mean, when you look at some of the people we know in things like SEO and HubSpot implementation and some other things that pay-per-click marketing and things like that, I never even knew that was the history of it in Utah like there is.
Well, yeah, and I have to admit, when we first moved back, well, up until the end of 2019, my old company, I traveled 40 to 45 times a year. So I wasn't doing anything here. So when I started my business, that was one of my first, things to do, was dive in and get to know people and get involved in the community. And it sounds kind of silly because I'm from here and I've been home for a while, but it's almost as if I had just gotten here a little over a year ago, just uncovering everything, meeting awesome people, obviously, meeting folks like yourself, and really getting an idea of what's going on here. So it's gotten even more exciting as I've had to, been able to dive in that way.
Well, you say that, and it rings true with a lot of people, I think, because when I was running companies, and I've been in the Seattle area now for 20 years, right? So 20 plus years now. I didn't know the people in the Seattle area, because when you're in a company and you're running a company like you, or you're either traveling, I travel a fair amount too, or you're in that business, working in that business, running the business. You don't get out like you do when you're doing, consulting work or doing the things like you're doing, or covering a large sales territory.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. You can just kind of get in your own tunnel vision and here's what I got to do. Here's where I got to be. And that's it. So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, it's so important to just get out there and see what's going on.
very cool, very cool. So you've got a family in Utah now, right? Your
Yeah,
wife, kids, kind of thing.
absolutely. So we have 3 kids. We've got a 15-year-old son who's a freshman. We've got a 13-year-old daughter who is a seventh grader. And our other daughter, she's almost 7 and she's in first grade. And
Nice.
as we could imagine, they keep us plenty busy. But I want to go back to something you said earlier about last year. We've always been very family focused and family centered, but we were still busy. And it was, kid stuff and kid activities, which is great. But man, those first couple months when they just shut everything down, all activities, everything, that was unbelievable. That was a blessing we didn't know we needed. Just
Yeah,
every night being together, we'd go outside and play basketball. We'd have conversations. Nobody had practice. Nobody had a game. Nobody had to get here or there. And man, that was honestly one of my favorite times of my life is just, having nowhere to be, just the 5 of us.
yeah. Well, I'll probably choke up here, but you, I tell people the same thing. I've got our kids are 26 and 21, and they were here for 3 or 4 months. My son's a senior in college, and our daughter lives in Seattle, but she wanted to come home for a while. And exactly right. I say this, and I tell my wife this all the time: this is time we will never ever have in our life again.
Yep.
When everything shut down, and you got that family time, like you said, eating dinner at the dinner table every night, like going out and doing stuff as a family, or just going out for a walk, or like I said, playing catch in the yard, whatever the heck it is.
Yep.
But we will never probably have that again. And
Yep.
it's such a precious thing.
Well, it is. And I honestly, here's my only concern as things start moving in a better direction with, we've got the, with COVID and the vaccinations, all that good stuff. That's all
Yeah.
tremendous. I just want people to remember those things from last year.
Yes.
Right. I want people to remember those things and realize we don't need all the stuff. We don't need all the excitement and always being somewhere in this. It's just really the basics. So I know that it's forever changed our family and how we handle ourselves and what we're willing to do because it was a gift.
No doubt. And I agree 150%, man, because it is, you just feel closer. And I was telling somebody this the other day. I feel like now I can, even in my wife too. I mean, you just feel like you can hug them and you love them more because you had that time that you just never had before.
Yep,
and it's so cool.
Yep.
So cool.
Well,
And I go on for that a long time because, like I said, it is a big deal, and it's really great to hear you say that and hear that happened for you as well. Because I think that's just a golden lining in this thing.
Oh yeah. Well, and we were talking earlier before we started that I just took the last 2 weeks of the year off, and it's the 14th year in a row that I've done that, and it is a non-negotiable for me.
Yeah.
Take that time off. My kids are out of school. We do stuff as a family, kind of reflect on the year. I get ready for the next year with goals. But the reason why I share that is that was within the first year of my new business.
Yeah.
A lot of business owners think, oh my gosh, I've got a new business. I got to work 100 hours a week. I can't take a day off. Are you kidding me? Well, I just want people to know it's possible.
Yeah.
Right? It's 100% possible. When I set up my business and got ready to get going, that was just locked into my brain. Well, the last 2 weeks of the year, I'll be done.
Yeah.
I'll be done. So my year ends, prior to that. And so it's just, I just want business owners. And even if you're not a business owner, I did it when I was a salesperson, when I worked for somebody else. I just had that time and will never go without that because like you said earlier, I can't get that time back. I can always make more money. I can build another business, but I can't get that time back with my family. And so those last 2 weeks of the year, it's just become non-negotiable.
Yeah. Good stuff. Good stuff. And it is important. I mean, and there's different ways that people do it. And my wife and I, we've always, she was a salesperson, much like you, traveled large territory for many years. And we've always really integrated work and life. And now we can travel and do what we want and work. So that makes it a little bit easier, but those times where you're not working at all are certainly precious.
Yep, absolutely. And by the way, I didn't learn this. So even before when I was in sales and I take that time off, Would I check in a little bit? Sure. Would I check email? Sure, all that. But it was about, probably 6 years ago. For the first time, I actually completely disconnected for the full 2 weeks. I had just become a sales director. My boss could cover for me, all that good stuff. And what I realized was, of course, all the family benefits, that goes without
Yeah.
saying.
Yep.
There was actually a huge business benefit. When I was done with that vacation and being fully disconnected, I was so excited to get back to work because I had all these different ideas. My brain was able to work in a different way because I wasn't just thinking about the daily tasks. I was disconnected, let my brain kind of rest for a second, and then all this stuff started popping up. So I would venture to say that even if it's just for the business benefit, people need to get away. They need to disconnect. Yeah, whatever time of year, you want to do it, sure. But there is such value on the business side for taking that time away, engaging in other things, let your brain rest a little bit, and then you come back with fresh ideas and a fresh perspective.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. It is beneficial. And like you said, before we even got on, you said that you're ready to see your clients. You're ready to go coming back from the 2 weeks off. So that's great. And it also shows, it goes towards the passion you have for what you do.
Yeah, no, it's man, I love sales. First of all, I think sales is the greatest profession in the world when done properly. Right?
Done properly. Yeah.
We all know that sales has a bad connotation because most salespeople are not good. We've all dealt with that terrible, pushy, overbearing salesperson. But when it's done right, what you're really out there doing is you're out there to serve. You're out there to serve your clients or serve your potential clients. And so that's what I love with all of my clients is my way. If I serve them properly and do what I'm supposed to do, it's going to make them better sales professionals, better sales managers, all that stuff. And so, yeah, I love it. And I actually, right before this, I was talking to a client of mine. She called me. She says, hey, I'm struggling with something here. Can we walk through it? And after the 20-minute conversation, she had a clearer head. She had a clearer path and was ready to move forward. And I love that. I love that part of what I do.
Yeah. Yeah. Just helping those people. And because, and this is what, really, as I rolled into 2020, I had not been I didn't help people like I do now, and and just really give because I didn't realize how good it is for me and them, because as you're helping that client, it's almost like you get twice as much satisfaction back for it.
Yep.
And it just makes you want to do it more.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And again, that's true in life, right? That's true.
Yeah.
You go out and you're working at a nonprofit or helping at your church, or whatever it is, we get that back. And, something I've learned, I've had a coach through the Tony Robbins organization for years, and they have, different areas of life that you look at. Well, one of them, a lot of times the area might be titled, career or job or whatever. But the way they put it was work/career/mission. And that should be a progression, right? Our goal should be to feel like we're, in our mission within our work, right? That we're actually out there serving and not just working a job or not just climbing the ladder in a career, but actually in our mission of what we were meant to do.
Yeah.
And so ever since I saw that years ago, I thought, no, that's where I want to get to. And before I started my business, it was a great career.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. It was a great career.
Yep.
And now I feel like I'm finally actually in serving a mission within my work and through my business.
That's awesome and well articulated, man, because you described what I found in 2020. And it is like when you find that mission and you go, man, I am here. I mean, it wakes you up in the morning.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it doesn't mean every day is rainbows and lollipops, right?
Nope.
You still have your obstacles, you still have your issues to deal with. And, I tell people all the time, there were plenty of days last year I wanted to curl up in a ball on the corner and suck my thumb and cry, right? It happened. But you remember, hey, what's this for? Who benefits by me continuing to fight through and learn and grow and push? And for me, it starts with my family, right? That's the center of everything here for me. And then beyond that, all right, well, who can I help? And, it's so much better that way, knowing that that's there.
Yeah. Yeah. So now, Jason, when you're doing what you do now, and correct me if I'm wrong, is you're with Sandler Training, and you do use the Sandler Training method to help train salespeople and sales teams and those things. Now, and we'll talk about that a little bit, because I've got a couple questions about that, but then a couple questions about 2020 and what you really saw in 2020. So now there's a lot of different ways that people train, look at different options for this, right? There's different options. Why do you think, what drew you into the Sandler method or the Sandler organization to use that method as your base of your business?
No, great question. And I'll tell you, so I actually was a client of Sandler Training for 12 years.
Okay.
But I have to tell this story because I don't think anything happens by accident. So I moved to North Carolina, and again, it was my second sales role, second company in sales. And they were fairly new. They were 3 years old. It was 2007. And my boss was one of the co-founders. And so I move out there, and I'm doing all right, getting the ball rolling. But one day he just says, "Hey, have you ever thought about sales training?" And I said, "Well, no, but I love to learn. Yeah, let me start looking around." So I looked around, Google sales training, whatever I did, and I found a Dale Carnegie course. I forget what the title was, but it's some 8-week course around sales. So I signed up for it. And no joke, about a month before it was supposed to start, someone from Dale Carnegie called me and said, "Look, the majority of the attendees for that class were from one company, and they've had to pull out, so we're going to cancel that class." So I called my boss back. "Hey, here's what happened. I don't know where else to go. Any ideas?" And he said, "Well, I've been hearing some stuff on the radio about this company called Sandler Training. Why don't you check them out?"
Yeah.
Well, it turned out there were two offices right there in Charlotte. I forget. I talked to both of them. I forget what happened with one, but the gentleman, Jim Dunn, at the other one, we just connected. And so we get together, and listen, I didn't have two nickels to rub together. I got to be honest with you. And Sandler is training's not cheap.
Yeah.
But Jim worked with me, and we figured out, something to make it happen. And I just dove in. And, Sandler, it's all about ongoing reinforcement training. So unless I was sick or out of town, I was in his office every Friday morning for training for 5 years.
Wow.
And just kept going. And every time I was there, something else would hit me, or it hit me different. I'm learning and trying something different. So I fell in love on that side. Well, I then, moved back to Utah. And before COVID, all this stuff. Well, a month after I moved back, he got cameras and flat screens in his office so he could train virtually when he needed to.
Yeah.
Well, thankfully, I was able to rejoin training from Utah virtually. I then become a sales director with that company, managing the Western region. And at that point, my company then paid for me to go into the management training.
Yeah.
And I was in the management training for 6 years. So 6 years on the sales side, 6 years on the management side. Okay. And to circle back to the beginning, had I taken that Dale Carnegie course, you and I are not talking, Damon.
Yeah.
I'm not here right now. I'm doing something different.
Yeah.
So at any rate, get that going. Well, it was probably a couple of years ago. I was looking at my travel, and even though I traveled frequently, it was maybe 1 or 2 nights, so not Monday through Friday, but still frequently.
Yeah.
I look at my son, who's 13 at the time. I'm like, man, he's going to be out of our house in 5 years.
Yeah.
And my oldest daughter, shortly behind him. So I simply started thinking, I want to do something different.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is yet, but I want to do something different. Is it a different company? Is it a local company? What does that look like? And I then was signed up to go to, Sandler has these sales summits in March in Florida. So in 2018, I went as a client. And it completely just, boom, lit the fire. Started like, man, maybe this is it. And I'll be honest with you, along the way, I had some thoughts early on. I thought, maybe one day that might be something to explore. But I go to that summit in March of 18, and I come home and I tell my wife, I'm like, you know what? I really want to look at this option. So I start asking some questions. And again, we're thinking maybe it's way down the road. Well, I'm signed up to go to the summit in March of 19 as a client again. Come to find out, they were having discovery days at the summit for people looking at the business side of it, right? Looking to join. So I called my trainer, Jim, and I said, Jim, hey, do you mind if I join the discovery days instead of attending the summit? He said, oh, no, go for it. So I'm there two days. Now, before I go out, I have a much higher risk tolerance than my wife does.
Yes.
Before I go out, she says very clearly to me, don't you dare sign a thing. Don't you dare commit to anything until we talk. Let's figure this out together. So I go to the discovery days, and very smart on her part, right?
Yeah.
Go to the discovery. Every break, I'm on the phone with her. Hey, here's what we talked about. What questions do you have? Da, 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 da. Have wonderful time out there. Come home, and we sit down as a family. And at that time, you know, my son is 13, my oldest is 11, and our youngest is 5, or 4.5. So the four of us, we sit and we talk about, well, hey, if dad starts this business, what does that look like? And do you guys want to, would you like dad to be home more and not travel as much? We're having great conversations. And I have to share this with you. So we're Catholic, but I have to share this because this is very powerful for me. So I said to my wife, I said, look, can we pray the rosary together to decide where do we want to go with all this? And she said, yeah, but you're not expecting Nora to do that, right? Which is our 4.5-year-old at the time, right? I said, no, that's fine.
Yeah.
So the four of us are sitting there in the living room, and we go to start, and we have, when you go upstairs, there's a little kind of walkway where you can look down in the living room. And our 4-year-old looks down, 4.5, and she says, hey, are you guys praying that necklace? Yeah. And she comes running down, sits in my lap the entire time.
Yeah.
And right then I said, this is exactly what we need to be doing.
Yeah.
And so we said, all right, let's build a timeline. What does that look like? We decided to start in December of 19. And, December 6th was my last day with my last company. Yep. December 8th, I'm on a plane to Baltimore for 10 days of training. Wow. And there you go. But, that was a long answer to come back to your original question of why Sandler. It changed my life.
Yeah.
I lived it as a client.
Yeah.
What I learned, what I was able to implement, the people that I met, the mentors that I still have to this day that I met all along, the friendships that I created, learning the system. There's a lot of great systems out there. There's a lot of great training out there, but I feel like Sandler is the most encompassing. Most training out there focuses on technique alone. And we actually have something called a success triangle where you look at attitudes, behaviors, and technique. And as critical as technique is, we think it's the least important of the three. And so I knew that. I lived that. I understood, no, this Sandler helped me up here.
Yeah.
Sandler helped me with my attitude and my beliefs. It helped me with understanding what do I need to do on a regular basis on the behaviors. And then, of course, technique. So I had personal proof. And so once I learned the business side of it and what a great family it was, and I'll share some stories on that in a second when we talk about last year. Once I saw that, it was just like, there's no other place I want to be. And, I had a few people, when I was telling them what I was thinking about doing, they'd say, well, man, why don't you just start your own thing? You've been around enough. Why don't you just start your own consulting business? And I thought, okay, I could probably do that, but there's no way I was going to come up with the kind of content that Sandler already had. It's like, hey, do I want to start my own burger joint or buy a McDonald's? And so, so it's, here we are 13, 14 months in, and I couldn't be happier.
Awesome. That's such a great story too, because you lived it. You saw how much it helped your sales career, both in the sales as a salesperson and as a sales manager. And now you're able to, you live it now, helping others do that same thing. So in your practice now, are you helping both like people in the individual sales training and sales management training, or what do you really help people with?
Yeah, great question. So with Sandler, sales and sales management is our foundation. Okay. Yeah. Looking at my current client mix, I've got it all. I have some individuals that, of course, I have a soft spot in my heart for because they're paying for it out of their own pocket.
Yep.
I did. So I love working with individuals that are just saying, you know what, I can do better. I want to grow. I want to become more valuable in the marketplace. I will work with those folks all day long. Then we do have companies. Yes, companies and their teams and all that. Yep. And whether they're in the sales side of things or in the management side of things. But we're doing all that. But we do have other stuff too. We've got, programs where we look at an entire organization from top to bottom.
Yeah.
We've got stuff for, customer service or anybody that's talking to customers, but they're not salespeople. So, we've got a lot of different stuff, but yeah, sales and sales management is our foundation.
Yeah. That's cool. And your individuals, I just go back to that, and I wrote it down when you were talking about it, because I'll tell you what, I've read some stuff in the last 30 days that really changed some things for me. And the one thing that just a quote that sticks out in my head, and I'll butcher it horribly here, is talking about Jim Rohn, ROHN, and he talks about, you can't become what you want or you can't get what you want in your career until you become the person that will attract that, or something like that. I'm butchering it, like I said, but I think about that when you hear those individuals that, they are forking out hard-earned money that could probably go to other things easily that would maybe not give them the long-term benefit that the training would. And they are going to create a better life for themselves doing it.
No, you're right. And it's, so first of all, Jim Rohn is my all-time favorite. I have every minute of his audio.
Yeah.
And it's funny. My son has a lawn mowing business and he can't drive yet. So I help him. Yeah. So for about 5 hours every Saturday and during lawn mowing season, I'm out there with him, and I listen to about 100 hours of Jim Rohn audio every summer. So wow. I love Jim Rohn. And one of the ways he said what you just said is this. He said his mentor told him, now this is back in the 50s, right?
Yeah.
A long time. He said, you should have a goal to become a millionaire. And he said, it's not because of the money, but who you will have to become to achieve it. Yeah. Right. And you can lose the money, which Jim Rohn did initially. He became a millionaire and then lost it and then built it all back up and beyond. But he held on to everything he'd learned. He held on to who he had become to achieve that. So no, I'm with you. We've got to invest in ourselves. I have a quote when I do my trainings with my classes. Every time I've got a quote up there. It says, if you invest in yourself, you make a living. If you invest in your job, you make a living. If you invest in yourself, you make a fortune.
Yeah.
Right. And we've got to invest in ourselves. We've got to feed into it in a whole holistic way.
Yes. Yes. Well said. Well said, because it is, you got to respect the people that are taking that leap, working and working. You just know it's like, you need every dollar you make sometimes, and to take that dollar and put it into investing in yourself, it will reap the benefits in the future.
Yep, absolutely.
So being in sales in 2020, this, I mean, for me, I look at it in the massive shift of people going from in person to virtual, whether you're talking about whatever. How did you adjust the training? Not so much that you were going virtual rather than classrooms, but how did you help people continue developing through that? Or what are some of the things that you saw last year that were just interesting?
Sure. Well, in some ways, not a lot changed, right? And I'll explain that here in a second, because really we still needed to keep doing the same behaviors. Now, granted, the one thing that changed in a lot of ways was you couldn't be face-to-face in some places. Some places you could, some places not so much. But again, I mentioned earlier, attitudes, behaviors, and techniques. Okay. I ask people this question, and I'll ask you, Damon. Does attitude drive behavior, or does behavior drive attitude? What do you think?
I think attitude drives it.
So about 95% of people will say that, and I completely understand. And you're right. When we feel good, we're ready to take on the world, right? Yeah. When we feel good, it's like, hey, I got to do this. I got to make this many calls. I got to go whatever. But the problem with that is we don't feel good every day. So that's why we say it's critical that we have to know what are the behaviors we have to engage in and with what frequency to give us the best chance of achieving that outcome we're shooting for. And what happens is when we do those behaviors, even if we start off not feeling great about it, by the end of it, we typically feel much better. And I'll give you a couple examples. So for anybody out there that maybe they've done a half marathon or a marathon or some sort of race. Well, they know what their training program has to be. And I can promise you, because I've done some of those things, I've done some ultras and marathons, stuff like that. It wasn't every single day that I went out there. I'm like, yes, I am so excited to go run for 4 hours. I'm pumped. But I knew I had to do it, because if I didn't do it, I would struggle on race day. However, I can tell you this, every time I went out and did it, when I was done, I felt much better about it. I was much more excited. So real world, I'll tell you what happened with me, and then I'll tell you how I've helped some of my folks with this. First of all, that first Monday that everything did shut down in Utah, for about 2 hours, my head was in the toilet. Now, I had some clients at this point, and things were moving. And yes, we did move online, but my head was in the toilet of, oh my God, I just started this business. What is this going to do? Is everybody going to shut down? Is anybody going to buy anymore? Am I going to get any more clients? I really struggled mentally for a couple hours. Well, thankfully, I remembered what we teach, what I teach, which is you've got to behave regardless, right? So what I then did was I just started thinking, okay, what can I control? What can I do to give back? How can I help this current situation? And I just started brainstorming, okay? And in the end of it, I came up with a couple ideas. I came up with some kind of a free training schedule that I put together. I put together some free training for salespeople that had gotten laid off as a result of COVID. I started reaching out to universities just to see what was possible and anything. And by the end of that day, Damon, I felt 100 times better. Not that I had it all figured out, but I at least had some ideas. I at least you realize, okay, this is what I can control. And so right then and there, that just solidified in my brain even more the importance of behaving regardless of how we feel. So now with my clients, that's something we focus on a ton. You know, I could ask 100 salespeople, hey, what do you need to do to hit your quota every month? And 85% of them are going to come back and say, well, my quota is this, and our average deal size is this, so I need to sell X amount of deals. All right, well, that's all true, but we got to dig a lot deeper.
Yes.
To have that many sales, how many presentations do you need to have? To have that many presentations, how many discovery meetings? To have that many discovery meetings, how many initial calls? And all the way down to the most basic thing. And then that's what you set your goals to. That's what manages your behaviors. And so with them, maybe it was, face-to-face drop-ins, and we had to change their behavior to over the phone. All right, well, maybe they really hadn't made a lot of cold calls. What does that look like? Okay, we've got a lot of stuff on that, but that's where we focused on a lot during that time is, again, what can we do? And then, of course, this all started Zoom, right? People started at least being able to see each other a little bit more instead of just over the phone. So what's the best way to go about that? So I'll be honest with you, I've seen a lot of companies out there that have continued to grow and do well and expand. And thankfully, my clients are part of that. They've done a great job. They've adapted and they've realized, hey, we can't use COVID as an excuse anymore. First couple months, a lot of people didn't know what was going to happen. But after that, we kind of realized, all right, this is what we're dealing with. Let's plow ahead.
Yeah. You make a good point, because the brainstorming part of that, when you're in that standpoint and controlling what you can control, because you should be something that hit me hard all the time, man. You would just just make your guts turn. And then you back it out into, okay, I can't control any of that other junk, right? I can't control any of that. I can't do anything about it. Now let's focus back on what we do and what we can control. And man, that does, just like you said, it gives you you still are going, hey, I don't know where it's going, but I'm doing these 3 things that can move it in the right direction. I'm doing everything I can.
Yep.
And that's good. And then when the other thing that you said in here that I think is just gold that people need to think about, especially in sales, but this applies in a lot of different places too, is dig down below. Like you said, I need to close this many deals. Well, yeah, you do, but what you have to do that, and you back through those levels, because I can't remember. God, I read a book a couple months ago now where they were talking about that. Don't focus on what is the basic thing you need to do to drive the outcome that you need. Don't focus on the outcome at all, because the outcome will manifest itself if you're working on the right, as you said, behaviors.
Yeah. Well, here's two things on that. Regarding the behaviors, here's something I've seen a lot in my career. Most salespeople don't know those answers.
Yes.
They're just kind of flying by the seat of their pants. So the problem with that is when they've got a poor mindset or a poor attitude, which we all have from time to time, they end up doing nothing, right? They end up just saying, you know what, I'm just going to call it a day. It's just not my day to day. So that's why it's critical that we have our necessary behaviors crystal clear, so that on the days we don't feel good and we don't want to do it, we still know what we have to do. But if we try to decide what we have to do when we've got a poor attitude, it's so much harder. Now, the other thing I want to add to that, I heard this interview. It was Nick Saban, the Alabama football coach, being interviewed by Dan Patrick probably a couple weeks ago now. And, obviously, wildly successful coach, and he's been around a long time. So Dan Patrick asked him, he said, what's changed over the years with the kids you're recruiting? What's probably been some of the biggest change that you've seen? And his answer blew my mind. And I came home and I made my two older kids listen to it right away. But here's what he said. He said the biggest thing that he has seen change in the kids that he recruits is expectation. He now has kids that are going to be incoming freshmen that all they care about is, hey, I want to get 50 catches and X amount of touchdowns my freshman year. And that they're all focused on the outcome only. And so what happens, they come in, maybe they don't earn a starting spot, so they're not getting the outcome they want. They then get frustrated, they get a bad attitude, and potentially it derails their college career. He said the best athletes that he works with, what they do, they focus on the process.
Yeah.
They focus on the process. It's getting in the gym every day. It's eating the right stuff. It's working their tail off at practice every single day. So to tie it back to our words, they focus on the behaviors.
Yes.
Now, yes, of course, they all want to start. They all want to do well. They all want to win a championship. Of course, that's there. But they've fallen in love with the process and the grind. And I love when I heard that. I'm just like, man, that's what it's about. And that's something we talk about all the time. We've got to love the day-to-day.
Yeah. And when you look at it, there are so many similarities between sports and business. And I know people talk about this, but I had the opportunity. My son played baseball at a very high level of competition, and I don't know, 4 or so kids off there are going to be in the MLB if they're not already. And the club where he was out of a couple years ago, the kid won the Cy Young. So they know how to work on the process. And that is all they talked about. They were like, put in the work. Put in the work.
Well, absolutely. I was talking to my son. So he played as a freshman. I have to brag on him a little bit. He started varsity as a receiver this past year as a freshman at his high school.
Wow.
And we got talking about it as I'm looking, in last year when he was in 8th grade, he was going to the school before everything shut down at 6:30 in the morning to go to QB school and learn the playbook, right?
Yep.
Well, then everything shuts down and it goes to Zoom. He's on Zoom, taking notes, all these little things. Then in the in the spring, they were giving out body weight workouts because most kids don't have a gym. Well, we built a gym in our garage. So he reaches out to the strength coach. Hey, what can I do? Here's the equipment I've got. So the strength coach builds him a workout and he's working his tail off. They finally come back in June, kind of mid-June, to do workouts outside. He's there every time, all this stuff. And it finally hit me one day, and I said, his name's Roman. I said, Roman, do you realize the minutes or the time that you actually spend in games? It's probably about 5% of the overall time you've invested in football. And so you have to love the grind.
Yeah.
If you don't love the grind, you're never going to get to that 5%. You're never going to get to it. So in sales, yes, making a big deal is awesome. Closing a sale is an amazing feeling. But how much of our actual time do we spend doing that?
Yes.
It's in the preparation. It's in the prospecting. It's all the no's. We get told no way more than we get told yes.
Yes.
Okay. So we have to fall in love with the process. We got to make sure we have the right attitude and mindset to fight through that and keep doing the behaviors over and over and over. And of course, you make adjustments along the way. And,
Yep.
somebody that's been with Sandler for 25 years, their behaviors are different than mine right now, right? I get that. We make adjustments, but it's just critical that we identify what we've got to do and we just do it day after day after day.
Yeah, you are so right, and it is, and when I'll be honest, I didn't know much. Well, I had sold a lot, but I didn't, and I wasn't a salesperson. But until I met Jeff Graham about 5 years ago, and he always talked about that, and it was the first time I really worked with someone that they had broken the sales process down, similar to what you're talking about, and the importance of simple things like talking about a sales meeting after it and going through the conversations and replaying that and talking about it.
Yep.
We spent hours and hours doing that. And I'm like, man, if people actually take the time to and figuring out the process too, because, it was us selling our consulting stuff and doing what we're doing, selling businesses. But when you get a process and you understand how a conversation should flow in a normal thing. And like you said, you're always serving, you're trying to figure out what challenges that these people have. And if what we do meets it, and then, but does it make sense to talk further? But just understanding the process, because if you don't, you are just winging it.
Yep.
And I go back to the sales that I had been involved in years before. A lot of it was just winging it.
Yep.
You get yourself, you make enough calls, you get yourself in the right place in the right time, and yeah, it works. And those kind of things. But the training that you're providing these people gives them the fundamentals, to get there. Like you said, your son working and playing football. It's not that he knows how to play football as much as it is he knows how to get his body right, his mind right, and understand the game so that when he gets to play the game,
yep,
he's really good at it.
Yep, 100%. It is, you mentioned the no process. Most salespeople are flying by the seat of their pants.
Yeah.
And what's detrimental is to what you just said, when they actually have some success doing it that way, because then they think, oh, well, hey, I'm good. I'm good. Well, yeah, you may have accomplished some stuff, but you're not reaching your full potential.
Yes.
Right. And we call ourselves, we're an elite performance center for businesses. And
right.
the analogy, again, we'll stick with sports because my simple brain can understand that.
Yeah.
You look at a high school athlete, a college athlete, or a professional athlete. They're all smart enough to put together a workout. They know enough of, hey, I should probably eat more of this, but maybe not as much of this stuff, right? Yep. They know that to an extent. But the ones that want to reach their full potential, they engage outside help. They engage physical therapists and massage therapists and trainers and nutritionists, and they look at them from every single angle. We can't see ourselves, right? We can't see what we're doing all the time, but if we have somebody helping us and then telling them how to do it. So now those people are saying, yeah, you could work out like this, but if you work out like this, you're going to see gains much faster. If you eat like this, you're going to have more energy. You're going to be ready to go. If you get a massage after every workout, this is what's going to happen. And that's how we look at ourselves, but it's for business. So yeah, there's definitely successful salespeople out there, but have they reached their full potential? And most of the time, there are people out there flying by the seat of their pants, doing what they've always done.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great way to explain it, because you coaches and mentors are invaluable.
Yep, absolutely. And I'll tell you, I've had a shift, probably the last 3 or 4 months, and a lot of it's come from my colleagues that have been doing this a lot longer. I kind of initially went in thinking, I'll work with anybody. I want to work with anybody, or let me find the companies that are struggling and let me help them. But no, you know what? I'm starting to shift more towards, I want to work with companies that are already in the top 25% of their industry.
Yeah.
I want to work with companies that are already doing well, but their ceiling is much higher. right?
Yeah.
Their growth opportunities are tremendous, and they've already got the right mindset of doing things well and putting in the effort. That's who I love to work with. People that they've already got this mindset and this drive built into them, but I can just help them hone it a little bit more specifically. And again, I'm not going to turn down a phone call. I'll have a conversation with anybody.
Yeah.
But if people don't have the right mindset and belief system already, then
Boom.
okay, we can be friends.
Boom. There you go. That was the one thing you said that you get is just like, man, you get to that point with your business and you are going to be happier. Your clients are going to be happier. Because I just had this conversation with my partner, Andrew, here yesterday morning. It's like, and we started this last year, the same thing. It's like, listen, we are only working with people that are going to put in the work, because we had, you can get sales, right? In our business, in selling a business or doing the consulting work that we do to get them prepared. Hey, I could spam people every single day and talk to them about, hey, and find the desperate people and do that. And honestly, years ago, that's how we started some of our business. But we went back and we said, those are the clients that didn't turn out well for us. What were the clients that turned out the best for us? What were the clients that we really had the good long-term benefits for them and for us? And it was the ones, like you said, that they're putting in the work right alongside of you to use what you've given them to really get that much farther.
Yeah. 100%. It's so true. And that's when it's a blast. It's just fun because you're in there pushing together. You're going after it. You want to grow. It's a constant just effort to improve and learn and try things out and fall on your face and you get back up and try it again and whatever it may be. But I learned pretty quickly that it doesn't work trying to pull people along. If they're not in the right mindset. And listen, I've been there. I've been there in my life where I wasn't in the right mindset. I'm not knocking on anybody. But if they're not in the right mindset, what can you do? And I even learned that back when I was a manager. We were in health. It was in healthcare, a very specific area of healthcare. And some people's mentality was, oh, we want to go out and only hire people that have been in the industry and they're rock stars and da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
And there's some value there, don't get me wrong. But I learned pretty quickly, I would much rather hire somebody that has the drive and the determination and the work ethic, but maybe they have zero experience in our world. We can teach them that, but I can't teach somebody how to work hard. I can't teach somebody how to push themselves and do whatever it takes to be successful. Yeah.
Now, do you do assessment? I see that you got the DISC background and that kind of thing. So do you help people with recruiting as well?
Yeah, great question. I appreciate you asking. Absolutely. That's one of the biggest issues we see with companies when
that's why I asked.
Yep, is they've hired the wrong people to begin with.
Yeah.
And we don't mean on a human level. They're lovely people, but they're not the right fit for that role. So first of all, anytime I start working with somebody, the first thing I do is we assess the team. Because if they don't have the right people on the team, I'm not going to charge them for training, right? I don't want to waste anybody's time or money, but I want to make sure we're all on the same page from our starting point. But in a perfect world, yes, when I've got a client in the interview process, we are assessing. And this is what I did when I was a client myself. Here was my process. I would have 3 or 4 steps of, interviewing and kind of narrowing it down to my top 2 or 3 finalists. And it was those are the folks that I would have do the assessments. And then I would utilize the assessments for the final 1 or 2 steps of the overall process to bring on the right person. Yeah. And I suggest that to my clients. They can do it, whenever they want, but bringing the right people on to begin with is where it all starts. And then if we know we've got the right folks, we get them into training and go on from there. But yeah, great question. We've got a few assessments we utilize.
Yeah.
And, it's critical because real quick, the one of them that is most critical, it looks at ambition and drive, takes responsibility, different things like that you can ask someone in an interview, hey, tell me about your drive. Oh, I'm a hard worker. Man, I get up early and I get after it. What does that mean? Right? But these assessments can actually look and understand where do they fall in those areas. And we can point that out ahead of time so that we know. So many people are hiring people off of a gut feeling.
Yeah.
And we'll just, oh, hey, well, I like them. Okay, that's great. But that's a small piece of the puzzle. Yeah, they need to be a good culture fit and all that, but do they have those intangibles? And these assessments we use can identify that. And they were a lifesaver for me, and my clients love them.
Yeah, I asked that because I was introduced to it many years ago. Actually, my brother was in HR, and God, it had to be in the early 2000s. That he said, "Hey, you got to take the test and go through this." And then we started actually using it from a company that did it. And man, when you start to really understand, you go out and you find your best performers and what they look like on a personality basis, or even just the whatever you're using. There's many different ways to do it, but I realized, and my point is, I realized after doing that is, you oftentimes hire somebody that's like you, and they're not even the right person for the position.
Yep.
That's what I realized real quick is like, do not try to go by a gut feeling, because you're wrong half the time.
Absolutely. And again, hiring is part art. Don't get me wrong.
Yes.
Okay? There is an art to it. And yes, they need to be that cultural fit and everything, but we cannot ignore the science of it. I want to say it was the end of last year, maybe, fall of last year, Harvard Business Review put out an article, and they said the cost of hiring the wrong salesperson was up to $300,000.
Yeah.
Actual costs, lost opportunity costs, all that. And I see that all the time. People just hiring people they know, or someone that was referred. And a referral is great.
Yeah.
But we've got to make sure we're doing our due diligence on the front end and bringing the right people in to begin with. And I'll tell you again, I learned this lesson the hard way, because I didn't do it one time early on with my first client. But now, if I have somebody that's talking about engaging with me and they're not going to do those assessments, I will not bring them on.
Yeah.
It's too important.
Yeah, you're right. It is, because you're I don't know, you're trying to put out a forest fire with a garden hose in some size, or that's not a good analogy. But if you got the wrong people on the bus, you just don't get there.
Yep, 100%. Yeah, we got to make sure it's the right folks, that they're trainable, that they're going to take advantage of it, and all that. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, it's so funny, Jason, because when we started, before we got on, you guys said, "Well, how long do we usually go?" And it's like, well, how long do we really have to do this? Well, we've been on for 57 minutes now. And so, see, I told you, we don't have to worry. Because I knew you're passionate about what you do, and you're really good at what you do. And we've got, I'm writing notes here. We got a lot more things we can cover. But one of the things I wanted to cover quickly before we're done here and we wrap up is, so what really is the one thing that you see now that if a salesperson could take away one nugget from our conversation today about their technique or behaviors or attitude or anything you've talked about, that you said, man, it will help if you start thinking about this tomorrow?
Sure. Well, first of all, engage in outside help. Whether it's me, somebody else, I don't care who it is, but you will never reach your full potential if you do it without outside help, coach, mentor, something like that. Okay. So I think at the very bare minimum, you've got to do something like that and engage, whether it's, again, a mentor that you're not paying, but you're investing time, or a coach, or whatever it is. You've got to engage in outside help, or you'll never reach your full potential, first of all. But when it comes to sales, honestly, I'm going to come back to the behaviors. I'm going to come back to, clearly identifying the behaviors you need to engage in on a daily and weekly basis. And it takes some work. Some people say, well, I don't know those numbers. I don't know how many discovery meetings I need to have to get to a presentation. I don't know any of that. Well, if you don't know, that's okay. Here would be my guidance. For the next month, track your performance.
Yes.
Track every phone call you make, track every referral you get, track every, initial conversation that leads to, and all the way down to sale. How many ever steps you've got, track it from the initial interaction or initial attempt down to sale. And after a month, you will then have some ratios.
Yes.
And then track it from there on out and find out where you can get better. Because once you start having ratios and you start engaging in those behaviors, all right, well, I need to make X amount of sales, so I've got to have X amount of leads to get there. Well, then that's where technique does come in, and you can start getting better. And then you close, instead of 1 out of 10, now you're closing 2 out of 10.
Yes.
Now you're closing 3 out of 10. And that's one last thing I want to say is, especially out here in Utah, with a lot of these tech companies, what I'm seeing is it's all about numbers. Well, if we're closing 10 out of 100, if we called 200, we'd close 20. And I want to say, well, yeah, that's right. But why don't we focus on the 100?
Yeah.
Instead of just ramping up, let's focus on the 100 too and get better. So at any rate, going on a tangent there, but no, I would say that identify those behaviors and do them regardless of how you feel.
Yeah.
Just do it.
That's a great one there, and good advice and good nuggets for salespeople. And I've got to add in too on the coaching. And even if it's something you can't afford or don't really understand how to help you, work into it with an accountability partner. Get some good books on it. I mean, you talked about Audible. I mean, in the car, running, whatever you're doing, there's so many ways to digest that knowledge. And then even an accountability partner will help you get started. But I think, as you said, once you start down that process, you find that a coach is probably a good way to go when you can.
You're 100% right. And even with the reading, I'll never forget my first sales meeting at my first sales job in Chicago. The manager brings in an article from Jeffrey Gitomer. And I'd never heard of him, but I went off and I bought the Little Red Book of Selling. And then that book mentions somebody else, and it goes, and then just on and on and on. There's no shortage of great information out there. There's no shortage of, like I said, mentors and accountability folks and coaches. So honestly, this might sound hard. It absolutely blows my mind when I see people that don't engage in some sort of outside help. It absolutely, I can't understand it.
Yeah, that's for sure, Jason. Well, it's been a pleasure to have you, get to let you understand you better and learn from you, because you have great nuggets here all the way through, especially about you doing the right behaviors, figuring out what those are. And I think that's really some good thing for salespeople here. So if people want to get a hold of you and talk to you more, Jason, what's the best way to find you? Yeah, so my website is cc.sandler.com. Okay. My email address, jason.caywood with a C, Caywood @sandler.com. Or text me, 385-256-5069. I'd love to hear from anybody. Awesome, man. Well, Jason, it's been great to have you on today and learned a lot. And I just appreciate you stopping by. Awesome. David, watching and just hanging out with us, learning from someone awesome like Jason. And we will be back here again on Tuesday. And I should have looked who we have on the schedule, but we got somebody else that's going to be awesome as well. And thanks again, Jason. We will see you later. David, thank you so much. Have a great night. You bet.